I finished putting the Delstar coat on the inside of these panels. I finished the last one yesterday. It's hard enough to take the paper off of it this morning, which I did, the paper and the tape, and then I've taken all of these and cleaned them up and taped up, papered up, masked the side that I just painted. This is the side that had the Delstar on it, and this will be the outside here of the panels. So I'm going to paint those with yellow, the finish coat on the airplane. So they're all taped up and ready for that. Now I just mask them off with newspaper, and that's a big no-no. You're supposed to use masking paper for that, but the nearest paint supply store, auto body supply store around here is about 1,000 miles away, so I have to make do with what we got. And I've had one time where I had some of the ink bleed through off one of these newspapers onto what I was painting. And the rest of the time it's worked out pretty good. So these have all been cleaned up. I was worried about missing my window and having to put primer on these again. It hasn't been that long, and it's been fairly cool, but I could tell that this stuff was still viable for putting paint over. When I go to sand it down, it doesn't just dust, it kind of balls up in the sandpaper and plugs it, which is a good indication it's not fully cured yet. I started out trying to tape these with this 3M tape, and this blue stuff I got at the hardware store. In fact, it's called Blue, but it's a 3M tape, and 3M is generally a pretty good brand to get. It's called Scotch Blue Painter's Tape for delicate surfaces. But it's supposed to, the adhesive is supposed to release on it so it doesn't stick on when you're taking the adhesive off, when you're taking the tape off. And it does work pretty good that way, although I have had it stick and had to peel it off after it's been on for a couple of days. But generally it's better than some of the old style masking tape where you had to virtually chisel it off with a hammer and chisel. The big problem with this stuff is it doesn't stick that well. It was peeling up. I have to go over all the places where I put it down and make sure I rub it down and make sure it's sealed good before I paint. And it's hard to get it to follow a line. This is 1 inch wide stuff, so it's not exactly fine line stuff, but I wasn't trying to get too fine of a line. I was just trying to follow the edges on these parts. And anyway, where you try to pull it to get it around an edge, it wouldn't hardly do that. It doesn't even stick to itself when you I tape up the edges and then run my masking over the top of that and tape down to the tape on the edges, and it wouldn't even hardly stick to it. And I got some of this frog tape at the hardware store. It's right next to the 3M tape, and it's the same price, the same size and everything. I'm kind of hesitant to buy it because it comes in this little tray here. And so the tray costs money, and if you buy one that's just loose, you should be able to get better quality stuff for the same price or less. And so this is just kind of a gimmick, and I found generally if you have a sales gimmick type of thing, then that usually means the quality of whatever you're buying is less than it would be. So, but I bought it, and I've using it, and it works a whole lot better than that 3M tape. It actually sticks down. You can pull it a little bit to follow a line that maybe not quite straight, and sticks to itself real good. And that's what I used on the windshield there too. It stuck on it, and comes loose when you want to pull it loose, so it's actually works better than the 3M stuff. So this stuff's all taped up. I've scratch sanded the primer side of it, basically just give it some tooth and to knock down some of the hairs and stuff that were on it from painting it. So now I can go down and mix up my finish color paint and start painting stuff. I got the first panel painted. This is the right panel that goes behind the boot cowl in front of the door. I did a pretty crappy job on it. I cleaned it up here, sanded it and stuff. I took it down to the shop and mixed the paint up and sprayed my first coat of paint on there, and I must not have got all the contaminants and stuff on. One over part of it was pretty good, but it had gobs on it. There are places on it where the paint didn't stick and it pulled away and stuff. I went ahead and washed that first coat all off with lacquer thinner down to the primer, cleaned it back up again, and sprayed it again, and I did 2 coats on it, and it came out pretty nice. And then I had to go away for a little bit there. It was cool and it was late. I had to go away for a little bit to take the dogs out for a walk, and I came back and put a 3rd coat on because I had a little bit of paint left, and it just come out terrible. It just spattered. It's real rough on there, and apparently the paint set up in the paint gun enough to where it wouldn't flow through it properly, and I couldn't see what was going on because I've got that fresh air mask to put on to wear, and that thing is it works good for keeping the paint out of your lungs and stuff. It works good for keeping clean air coming into you, but you can't really see very good out of it. There's too much distortion in it between my glasses and then the plastic lens on there and then the plastic protective lens that goes over that. It gets pretty bad. Plus it was getting dark out, or lost the light out anyway. Anyway, I didn't realize how bad that was until I stopped. I started trying to spray another piece to see what was going on, and I could tell it wasn't coming out right. So anyway, it's just kind of spattered on there. Now it's been several days, 3 or 4 days since I did that. I wound up working longer hours the last few days, and don't have enough daylight time to mix up the paint and stuff and do a proper job with a good light and stuff, so I haven't done any more. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this piece, but I think I can salvage this. I can sand it down and either put another coat of paint on it, or I may be able to just sand it down with some 400 and then some 600 and then polish it out, because it's plenty thick. And the coats underneath were nice. It's just this top coat that just spattered. It's kind of flowed out a little bit over time as it's hung here, but it still looks like crap. Finally got a day off here, so I'm going to go ahead and clean up my paint gun and stuff. I had it cleaned up and put in solvent. I'll go ahead and put it back together and mix up some more paint and try another one of these and see how bad I screw that one up. I got the left panel squirted with some paint. It looks pretty good. Brought it in here where it can dry and flow out. Did a little better job on it. I couldn't get my paint gun to spray right to start with. I couldn't get the paint to flow out of it. I'd cleaned it real good, put it all back together, and I just couldn't get the paint to flow out of it. So I got to thinking about it, and there's a little plastic screen that fits down in between the paint cup and the gun to help filter some of the chunks out of it. And I think that's what happened before with the other one, is as that paint set, it got in that screen and coagulated on that, and then it wouldn't let it flow through, and it spattered. And that was what was happening this morning, I'm pretty sure. I had to put a brand new screen in there, and I couldn't get it to flow at all with fresh paint. So I took everything apart. I didn't take everything apart. I took the cup off and took that little screen out and just put the paint in there without it, and it sprayed fine like that. So anyway, I've got this one done. This one's painted and it's curing here now. And I've got one of the, I think it's the left hand lower boot cowl that I've got 1 coat of paint on so far. I'm just getting ready to go down and put a 2nd coat of paint on it. I've spent some time on this right hand panel with some sandpaper on it, sanding it down. It looks pretty good now. I started trying to use some 400 grit open grit paper on it, and it just plugged up too fast on it, so I wound up getting some 260 220 open grit, wet and dry, but I just used it dry, and I sanded it down with it, and I got the high spots off of it. I got it to looking pretty good. There's still plenty of paint on there, and that would actually look pretty good if I took some finer grit sandpaper now and stuff and sanded it out some more and then buffed it out. That would bring it out, and it would actually look pretty good. But along the edges here where the paint's thin, it comes off pretty easy, so those edges are shiny. So I'll go ahead and take it down to the shop and put another coat of paint on it, concentrating around the edges, and then just put another coat on top of that. Got the 2 side panels painted up. They look pretty good. I had the right one, because it kind of messed up with the spatter on the paint. I let it cure for a few days while I was working. I didn't have time to mix up paint and stuff and and start painting the rest of these. So anyway, that thing hung and cured for a few days, and I took some sandpaper and sanded it down. I didn't sand all the color off of it. It actually got it down to where I could have polished it out, except for it shined up the edges and stuff, so I needed paint on that. But anyway, I hung it up last night after I did the last piece, and I squirted a coat on it, and it looks really good now. And the left side piece is pretty good. It doesn't look near as good as the right hand side piece, but it still looks pretty good. Yellow on the outside and the white on the inside there.